And thank you for being here today and joining us for the first of this series, Professionals in Sustainability. Uh, my name is Kathy Lang, and I work in the Open Academy at ESF with the Sustainability Management online degree program. I want to just share with you before we get into today's presentation that we have 2 more in this series coming up, so please mark your calendars, and I will also be sending out email reminders to everyone who registered for today. So I will be moderating questions following our presentation today. Please feel free to submit any questions you have during the webinar through the chat direct to me, and then we'll open up with a Q&A at the end. And with that, I want to get right into our, I think, inspiring presentation this afternoon. I'll turn it over to John Turbeville, our Assistant Dean of Student Affairs and Director of Career Services, to introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. We in Career Services are delighted to be partnering with Kathy and the Open Academy on this series of webinars on professionals and sustainability. It's with great excitement that I introduce today's presenter, Kristine Ellsworth. Kristine is a 2015 ERE grad and works currently for the New York State DEC as the Assistant Environmental Engineer in the Organics Reduction and Recycling Division. Thank you, Kristine, for being with us today and for all that you do to support ESF students. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to you.
Thanks, John, and thanks, Kathy and Brandon, for having me today. Just quick sound check that you guys can hear me. Okay, perfect. So thanks everyone for joining today. As John mentioned, my name is Kristine Ellsworth, and I work with New York State Department of Environmental Conservation in the Organics Reduction and Recycling section. And I'm here just to talk a little bit about what I do, kind of the road that led me here and how kind of sustainability threads into all of that. There we go. Yep, so I graduated from ESF, obviously, and I had a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Resources Engineering in 2015. I can't believe it's already been 5 years since I graduated. It's hard to believe. So I just kind of wanted to go over some of, you know, what I did at ESF, some of my extracurricular activities, some of the classes I took, and just kind of some of the experiences I took away from that. So on the screen here, you'll see there's a picture of us up at the Newcomb campus through the ERE trip. We do an annual trip up there, which is just a great way to connect with each other and upperclassmen as well. I was an orientation leader. That was something that I really built up to over the years. I definitely went into ESF a bit on the shyer side. But if you have the chance, I would highly recommend being OL. It really helps you with your leadership and your communication skills. I was a part of Engineers Without Borders, which gave me some project management experience and allowed me to connect with upperclassmen. ERE Club and NYWEA both allowed me to connect with young professionals in the real world, just to hear a little bit about what their jobs were, as well as took us on various site tours around Syracuse, just to, you know, really put engineering into perspective into the real world. Obviously, I was an engineer, so a lot of these are more engineering related, but if I could go back, I would definitely join a club that maybe wasn't so engineering related, just to get experiences and meet people in other majors. Us engineers tend to stick together. But yeah, and then Bob Marshall Outing Club and AXS Honor Society was honestly just a great way to meet other people and just get involved in other experiences to really make my whole time at ESF more well-rounded. So once again, since I was an engineer, some of these courses and memorable courses are a bit more related to engineering. But the point of it being that it's good to, you know, really take a broad look at what you're going to school for. Not everything has to be related to the coursework that you're going for. I took a girls' education in the developing world class over at SU, just because I have a lot of personal beliefs and experience and interest in all of that. So I wanted to kind of further some of my education on that. Same with humanitarian engineering, stormwater management, indigenous issues and the environment. A lot of those courses allow me just to look at projects more holistically. So if you have the chance to kind of break out of the norm, I would highly recommend that. I also took 2 classes that allowed me to travel abroad on kind of short terms, one for 2 weeks and one for 1 week. Once again, I know things are a little bit different right now with COVID, but if you do have the opportunity to do some sort of study abroad, whether it's, even for a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, I would really take the chance on it, just because it really gives you perspective on initiatives, whether they're sustainability or, environmentally related, how things work in other parts of the world. I think as a whole, we could do a lot better of learning from each other. And so, yeah, a lot of these classes, I chose them as memorable courses for me because they gave me skills that I could bring forward in an interview, and also into my job, even if it wasn't directly applicable, whether that be project management, problem solving, critical thinking, or just, communication skills. It doesn't really matter exactly what the project is. If you can go into an interview and show how you managed a project or how you did the data analysis in a project, they just want to see that you can take control in a group environment, get the job done, and then, how you apply those different experiences. So, yeah, I guess in summary for this, I would just say take classes outside of your major, experience something new, something different. It just kind of gives you a more well-rounded education. So my journey leading up to DEC, I had a couple different jobs and internships. I worked at Atlantic States Legal Foundation as an urban garden intern, which is actually located in Syracuse. That same summer, I also worked with Steve Shaw in the ERE department doing a watershed research project. And then for a couple different summers, I worked with New York State Department of Agriculture Plumpox Virus Eradication Program as a data manager. And as you see, none of these have anything to do with engineering, but I really felt like every single job gave me something different that actually came full circle a couple years down the line, skills that I learned. And once again, just like with classes, it's nice to expose yourself to different jobs to see what you like and what you don't like. And with that, it's totally okay to learn of things that you don't like just as much as it is to find out things that you do like in a job or an experience. And also through this, don't be afraid to leave if you don't like something. That's completely okay. There's plenty of job opportunities out there. But yeah, each one of these kind of gave me something different that I have continued forward with. The data manager really gave me a lot of skills in Excel and just managing large volumes of data. The research job I really enjoyed. Ultimately, it kind of showed me that I didn't particularly love research, which was totally fine, but I still really enjoyed the experience. And the urban garden internship kind of showed me the value in driving projects yourself. Sometimes they'll give you a project that's kind of vague, and it takes a lot of self-direction to put quality material to that project and kind of develop the project on your own. So getting forward into DEC, so I graduated in May of 2015, and I got this job in November of 2015, so about 5 months or so later. And so I interviewed with the organic production and recycling section. As a whole, the division is materials management, and we look at basically all of the solid waste in New York State. So that's your traditional garbage, your recycling, and your organics. So our section, we regulate and promote the diversion of organics. So that includes wasted food, or more publicly known as food waste, yard waste, biosolids, food processing waste, manure, crop residues, anything that really is can break down. And so our big point of our job is to prevent that from going to disposal and put it to beneficial uses such as composting, anaerobic digestion, etc. So I always say that our work kind of falls under 4 main pillars. The first being regulatory oversight. So first and foremost at DEC, our primary responsibility is to provide regulatory oversight. So making sure that the regs are protecting the environment. The next being legislation, having the chance to look at proposed acts of law, as well as implementing legislation itself, has been a really cool experience and one that I was not expecting. And I'll get a little bit more into the law later on that we're going to be implementing for my section. We also develop funding programs that support these ideas, as well as constantly doing outreach and education to get more people involved. So seeing as how this talk is really about sustainability and its crossover with materials management, I just wanted to talk about what sustainability means to me. And to me, that's designing systems that holistically prolong, protect, and respect our resources for now and the future. And as I move through this presentation, just remember that I am coming to from the lens of a materials management perspective and also from the government. And so everyone comes at sustainability from a different lens because it's such a broad topic, right? But the important part is kind of breaking down and working together to, you know, kind of combine all those lenses together to really make a holistic picture. So I wanted to just play a very quick video, one that I feel like just kind of encapsulates what we do. And I realize I didn't do the sound thing, so let me stop sharing for a second and then share so you guys can do the sound. Perfect.
Can we get strawberries? Okay.
Switch back over to the PowerPoint here. So the reason I show that video is because a huge, huge, huge portion of my work these days is related to food waste. It's really one of the up and coming topics in the environmental movement and the sustainability movement. And so, you know, as you see, we grow the food, we put all the resources into transporting the food, and then ultimately in the end, it was thrown away. And so a big part of my job is one, making sure that we can reduce wasted food, two, making sure that we can donate it to people and or to animals, and then three, kind of capturing that food before it goes to a landfill and put that to composting or other technologies. So for this presentation, I'm going to focus more on the food waste side of the work that I do, and then also more on the composting. So just so we can get all on the same page, food waste, where does it come from? As you kind of saw in the video, it's that the strawberries move their way through the system, but the reality is that food waste is lost along the whole chain. It's lost from every single sector, whether that be industrial, institutional, such as colleges, hospitals, nursing homes, commercial places like restaurants, grocery stores, and even our homes. Our homes are actually one of the greatest places that food waste happens. And as I mentioned, food waste is being generated throughout the entire process, whether it's at the farms and their packaging facilities and certain specs they have to meet on how the food looks, or maybe they decide that a shipment can't go to a certain location because of shipping logistics. You know, there's all sorts of things that prevent food from kind of making it to the next step. And then ultimately, whether it gets to your home or restaurant, school, what have you, and the food just isn't eaten and has to be tossed away. So right now in New York State and the United States, we dominantly have a linear system, which means that the food that we are throwing away is going to a landfill. And so why is food waste in landfills bad? When food waste and other organic material break down, it creates methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. So the more food waste we put into landfills, the more methane that is created. And while our landfills, a lot of our landfills in New York State do have methane capture systems put in place, there is still methane that's getting out. And quite frankly, if we can just remove that food waste to make a material that's useful for us, like compost, you know, why wouldn't we take advantage of that? So we're not looking at a linear system. What does that mean? What are we looking at then? So we're really looking at circular systems, building up the circular economies that we see, meaning that the food that we grow on a farm goes to the grocery store, goes to a home or a school or restaurant. The food that isn't eaten is donated. And then the food that is no longer good anymore goes to an organic recycling facility like a compost facility. This is also a movement that's happening at the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and we support their hierarchy, much like traditional recycling of source reduction, feeding hungry people and animals, and then looking at more some of those industrial uses of composting, anaerobic digestion, and other technologies, with landfills always being left. So kind of looking back at what it looks like in reality for New York State, oh, there goes the light in the room. if we're not sending it to landfill, what are we doing? We're doing it through wasted food reduction, food donation, animal feed, and all these other technologies. At DEC, we regulate animal feed through land application, and then we work with other entities on food donation, and we're always doing education on wasted food reduction. So we accomplished this through policy and program development. I'll talk a little bit later about the legislation that we put in place. We have regulations that regulate the composting community, anaerobic digestion, and other technologies that recycle food scraps. We're always doing various program developments, various outreach and education moments, funding programs. We're always trying to be transparent and engage with local communities because that's where the action really happens. We also participate in professional associations, which allow us to connect with materials management professionals across the state and beyond. We frequently are participating in conferences, workshops, just once again, so we can get more of the word out there and collaborate with others. Just because if we can connect the funding programs at the state level to the local level, it really helps implement change at every single level throughout the communities in New York State. So as I mentioned, I'm going to talk a bit more just about composting today. I feel like it's the most relevant, understandable topic, and it's really at the core of what we do in our section. Once again, just to give everyone a base information on composting so we all make sure we're on the same page. Composting is the controlled aerobic decomposition of organic materials. And the important part of that and what makes the difference than a landfill is in a landfill, it's anaerobic, which means there's no oxygen helping things break down, which is what creates the methane. But in composting, it's aerobic, which means there is oxygen involved, helping it break down, and that creates carbon dioxide instead of the methane. So you're mixing together food scraps and you're mixing together leaves, wood chips, carbon sources. And as you can kind of see in the pictures here, we have the food scraps in the bins. They're mixing it together with a woody material. And that ultimately ends up making compost, which looks almost just like soil, but it's even more rich in nutrients. And then we can put that back onto our fields to grow healthy food. And so composting in the state is happening in all sorts of ways. So I just wanted to show a few pictures of how we might see it. So there's food scrap drop-off programs building across the state. So this is one that's in Tompkins County. Basically, residents of the county can come and drop their food scraps off in that blue bin, and then the county takes it to a composting facility. It's a great way at a community level to kind of start getting people to think about it. This picture of this pumpkin here is really just showing you, this is the type of food that we see at composting facilities, the food that really isn't good anymore. It's gone bad. It's split open. You see stuff like that all the time. This bottom right picture here, that bike you see, they go around and they collect food scraps from residents. So they actually use that small trailer on the back of the bike to, put the totes on to go around the communities and collect their food scraps. They actually collect my food scraps from my apartment. And then in the back, you'll see that there's some compost piles there. So this is really just to kind of show scale. On the next slide, you'll see that the composting is much bigger scale. So once again, these are just some examples to show that you might be familiar with backyard composting, but large-scale composting facilities are very much happening in New York State. It's a very well-established business and operation. These businesses can take in thousands of pounds of food scraps per day. So they really got their system down, and this is legitimate business that's happening. And so these are just some examples of composting facilities from across the state. So this is a map of composting facilities that are across the state. This incorporates biosolids composting, yard waste composting, food scraps composting. And so we've got probably around 100 or so that are across the state right now. As you can see, they're kind of concentrated along the 90 and then down to New York City on 87 there. So there's plenty of room for expansion up in the North Country, especially the Finger Lakes, Catskills region. And so about 50 of these accept food scraps. So there's plenty of room. We have loads and loads and loads of food waste going to landfill right now in New York State. So there's plenty of opportunity for composting facilities to pop up at any level. And once again, just reiterating that composting is happening at every level, whether it be in people's own backyards, inside in a vermin composting bin, small scale at a community garden, a bigger scale community composting site, or a very large established large facility. And so the details on this slide aren't really as important, but just to show that this is part of my job of regulating facilities. We have various levels that facilities can fall into, whether they're exempt, registered, or permitted. Part of my job is assisting in reviewing these registrations and these permits for these facilities that do want to operate, just to make sure that as the facilities come online, that they are, protecting the environment and following all the rules and regs. So as I mentioned, the food scraps drop-off spots, like you saw in that previous slide, that is a program that's been really growing quickly across the state. This map 3 years ago would have been close to blank. And it's really been awesome to see a lot of these local communities are starting off with food scrap drop-off spots just to get, the residents interested in composting, because then people come to the site, you can talk to them about wasted food reduction practices, you can talk to them about home composting, the benefits of composting, where they can pick it up to apply it in their own backyards, et cetera. So it's just a really great point of conversation in communities. Similar to the residential food scrap collection services, you guys saw that bike earlier that collected the food scraps. This map, once again, would have been empty 3 years ago, and now we've got a number of services across the state. These are known as micro haulers, so they're just small businesses that drive around and pick up food scraps from your curbside, just like you would with recycling. So it's been really great to see that this is another business that's been blossoming in New York State. So looking a bit more kind of at the state level, how does sustainability, materials management, specifically organic management, play in to policy? So right now, we really are riding the organic wave into the future. Much like recycling was 25 years ago, it was kind of up and coming, and now everyone's doing it. That's kind of where we're at with organic recycling right now. We have a good number of people that are doing it, but in 25 years, we hope that everyone's doing it. So I'll talk a bit more about the New York State food donation and food scraps recycling law on the next couple of slides here. We're revising our New York State solid waste management plan, which is basically a plan that DEC publishes that kind of informs policies and regulations and recommendations moving forward for the next 10 years. And so we anticipate that plan to have a lot of recommendations as far as organics management goes. And once again, these types of policies are where you can kind of weave in the sustainable policies and practices, and making sure that we're looking at things holistically and making sure that we're going to protect our resources for years to come. And then most recently, the state passed the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. And what's important about that, aside from recognizing, that we need to address climate moving forward, is it did include a waste advisory panel. So this panel is made up of professionals in the materials management industry who are looking to once again inform decisions and recommendations and policies that's going to form over the next number of years as we continue to address climate change and the goals that they're looking to reach in the new climate law. So a little bit about the law that we are going to be implementing. My section specifically is responsible for implementing this law. It's the New York State Food Donation and Food Scraps Recycling Law. So effective January 1st of this coming year, businesses that generate more than 2 tons of wasted food per week or more must donate excess edible food and then recycle the remaining food scraps if they're within 25 miles of a organics recycler, so like a composting facility or anaerobic digester. This is a law that we've been aiming for a number of years. And one that's really exciting because it means that businesses are going to have to start addressing their food waste. And so there are some entities that are exempt from this, including hospitals, nursing homes, adult care facilities, K-12 schools. And so the businesses that you can expect from this are Wegmans, Tops, some of the larger chain restaurants, colleges. So really excited to start working with this. And if you're interested in this, you can go to the link at the bottom of this. I think we're going to share the presentation afterwards. Another big thing that we're working on is 2021 New York State Compost Awareness Week. This is an effort that we have been leading for the past couple of years. There's International Compost Awareness Week, and so we always make an effort to make sure that New York State acknowledges it. And once again, this is an opportunity to weave over between sustainability, materials management, and kind of disperse it out through communities across New York State. So this year it's going to be May 2nd through 8th. We look forward to connecting compost educators and community organizers across New York State, giving them the tools and the resources they need to talk about composting and its benefits in their own community. We're creating a digital outreach toolkit. We have a webpage that we do. We always try to get a governor's proclamation and encourage local communities to get proclamations. So this is another big outreach initiative we're currently working on. The New York State Organic Summit, this is another way that we can talk about policy with materials management professionals across the state. And so this year it's going to be April 13th to 15th. There is student registration if any of you are interested in attending for $25. But this is a really great event. I'm one of the planners for it. And basically brings together 175 to 200 materials management professionals across the state to talk about organics management in New York State. And so the big focus the past couple of years has been on food. We're going to be talking about the law I just mentioned, what we can do in the state to further the industry as a whole, our compost markets, talking about big trends, technologies that are coming up, diversifying the voices. So highlighting up and coming organics recyclers, especially young professionals. We want to see more younger people getting involved in this. And then also kind of discussing the crossover with climate change. And once again, this is really an opportunity for us, for everyone in the state to come together and talk about programs that they have worked in their own communities, you know, tips and tricks to getting those to replicate in others, and really just, you know, making those connections and figuring out who's interested in, you know, partnering. Other DEC initiatives that I honestly cannot talk to in depth on, but I just wanted to highlight. The state did pass the plastic ban waste law, which is really great to see. We also recently passed the expanded polystyrene foam container ban. And then we also have the Recycle Right New York campaign. So this is two of the outreach tools that they recently released on that. Once again, if you're interested in more, I just wanted to highlight them to show you guys that there's things happening in recycling across the board as far as the state goes, but I have links in there if you want to check them out. I'm also part of the internal sustainability initiative team within DEC. So we have sustainability teams throughout DEC. There's typically one in each office. We have monthly meetings. We talk about initiatives we'd like to see in DEC itself. While we try to promote sustainability outside of DEC, it's always important to look at sustainability inside your own company or business. So we meet really just to talk about that, make sure that there's various programs in place at DEC to make our own staff more sustainable, whether that be providing reusable cups, plates, cutlery for meetings, much like ESF I know traditionally does, you know, larger mugs. We try to provide reusables. We are implementing composting programs. We do waste audits. We have reuse tables and reuse rooms where staff can leave excess office supplies for other staff members to use. We're always trying to get refillable water bottle stations. I know that ESF has those, but that was a really big success in my building here. And then always just working on internal sustainability messaging. And something that I would recommend moving forward for anyone who goes out into the real world looking for a job is, if you can, start a sustainability team, see if your company, office, building already has one. It's a really great opportunity to bring people together from different backgrounds to talk about the initiatives they're working on. And so there's actually been a number of successes that we've seen in our own office since we kind of started, or since I joined the sustainability team. One example was there was an outdoor recreation ad going on. They were really focused on the outdoor aspects of it, and completely looked over the fact that they had used just a single-use plastic water bottle in the imagery. And so we were able to catch that and show them, you know, you should use reusable product imagery. Also with recycling Christmas trees, we traditionally only would have done that to talk about composting, but because of that group, someone else pointed out that we could also expand the outreach to show that you can use them for bird habitat as well. And then there's also Leave No Trace social media campaign that we're doing, which is bringing in staff from the various divisions, and all of us are coming together, putting our minds together to see how we can all talk about Leave No Trace and crossover to make sure that we're putting out the best social media campaign possible. So this is really for people who want to follow up, who are interested in organics management. There's always plenty of ways to join the conversation. If you're not interested in organics management, I would recommend looking into the associations that are offered in the topic area that you're interested in. It's a great way to get involved in the topic, and also just start asking questions of professionals and just kind of start tuning into the conversation. So once again, afterwards, if you're interested in organics management, you can click through some of the links I have here. Finding a job in the materials management world, whether it's organics management, traditional recycling, There's plenty of places, whether it be with the government at federal, state, or local level, local composting or recycling facilities, professional associations, like I mentioned, also working sustainability efforts into your own office or company if you don't get to work on sustainability on a daily basis. And then I also added in the Stumpy's Job Board, which is a Facebook group that I actually manage. And we're always posting various types of jobs, so join it if you want. And then one of my last slides here is I just wanted to go over applying for a job at DEC. So there are the central and regional offices. Central office is based out of Albany, and it focuses more on statewide programming, where the regional offices, there's 9 different regions in the state. The regional offices focus more on the public interaction. They deal with complaints, they deal with facility inspections and all that kind of stuff. And then central office helps out as needed. Careers at DEC, there's plenty of titles that you can apply to. There's continuous enrollment. Typically that's for engineers and some other job titles, but most people will have to sit for a civil service exam. So I just included some links on that. There's also opportunities for seasonal employment and internships. And then I'm definitely running over on time, but just general advice, and I won't read through all of these, is finding your strengths and highlighting them. So leaving college, if you're not the most outgoing person, or you're not great at data, or you're not great at project management, find the things that you are good at and work in your classes to highlight those skills and to hone in on those skills and to make those skills strong, because the best teams are teams that are made up of individuals with various strengths. So don't feel like you have to be someone that you're not. Just recognize what your strengths are and make them even stronger. Make sure you work on the things that you might identify as your weaknesses, but really work on identifying your strengths and highlighting them. Don't underestimate your abilities. You learn a ton on the job. Volunteer to take on the startup tasks at work. Don't let the work, wait to find you. Go out and find it yourself. Push your colleagues and your coworkers to talk about, the tough conversations to push policy projects and programs forward. Always make sure you're collaborating with others, because that's a huge pillar of sustainability. And then check out ESF alumni events, because that's a great way to meet alumni in your area. So that's all I have. I know I went over, but we can move into questions.